There are a number of great half-ton trucks on the market in 2015, but only the two we have assembled here can lay claim to being the last two North American trucks of the year. So what we have here is an old-fashioned duel in the desert. We're gonna put these two trucks head-to-head on the dirt and on the road to see which one comes out on top.
In 2014, the Chevrolet Silverado received its first major overhaul since 2007. The new exterior is accented with angular lines that give it a bold stance, and its interior features significant changes that include a stylish new dashboard layout featuring an 8-inch touchscreen that uses GM's MyLink infotainment. The new Silverado is available with a trio of Ecotec 3 engines based on the latest Chevy small block design. There's a 4.3-liter V6, a 5.3-liter V8, and a larger 6.2-liter V8. These motors are designed to improve fuel efficiency through direct injection, cylinder deactivation, and variable valve timing. The biggest update on the 2015 Silverado is a new 8-speed transmission that's only available with the 6.2-liter V8. This helps provide a wider gear spread but only takes up roughly the same amount of space as the 6-speed automatic. Like the Silverado in 2014, the all-new 2015 Ford F-150 was voted the North American Truck of the Year in its first year. The F-150 breaks new ground by being the first full-size truck to feature an aluminum body. Ford highlighted this weight loss by increasing payload and towing capacity since its gross vehicle weight is reduced. Ford also engineered a new fully boxed ladder-style frame that features 23% more steel in its construction for a total of 77% high-strength steel used in the frame. This still ended up being 60 pounds lighter than the previous model. The use of aluminum may be seen as a big shift, but arguably Ford's biggest gamble is the removal of the 6.2-liter V8 from the lineup in 2015, as its 3.5-liter dual-turbo EcoBoost V6 will now be the flagship motor moving forward. Ford will offer 4 engine options for the F-150, including the aforementioned 3.5-liter EcoBoost V6, a 5-liter V8, a naturally aspirated 3.5-liter V6, and an all-new 2.7-liter EcoBoost V6.
We spent the last few days testing these two trucks. We've been on the highway, we spent a lot of time out here in the dirt, sand washes, rocky slopes. So here with contributing editor Scott Russo. Now Scott, what did you think of the Silverado?
Well Josh, I think that Chevy proved with the Silverado that performance and economy aren't mutually exclusive. You know, the Chevy gets the job done performance-wise with an old school V8. Granted, it's about as high-tech as you can expect from that engine drivetrain. It has the direct injection and the variable cam timing that really helps with the economy, and yet it still has a lot of grunt down low. It can get itself out of pretty much any situation, whether you're grunting up the side of a hill or, you know, it's great when you cruise down the road. It's just a really nice, refined engine and drivetrain package, and the 8-speed, of course, it helps with the economy. It helps it, you know, pull out of the hole, helps it in cruise. It's just a fantastic overall package.
Scott, this is the first time that you've been in the EcoBoost motor. So there's two EcoBoosts. We have the larger of the two here, the 3.5-liter. So what did you think of this motor, both on the highway and off-road here today?
I have to say, I really am impressed with the truck. It doesn't give up hardly any horsepower or torque to the Chevrolet. It's a very smooth transition. You know, some people might be concerned about things like turbo lag. You've heard that in the past about engines that aren't naturally aspirated. There's a bit of lag associated with turbocharging. That's not the case here with the F-150. The F-150, in my opinion, gets with the program just as well as the Chevrolet.
It's interesting, you know, you take a smaller motor, so when you're not on boost, you're being a little more efficient, versus Chevy taking a larger block and using cylinder deactivation technology to kind of achieve a better fuel economy. So it's, you know, kind of different ways to approach the half-ton truck market, you know, in terms of power.
Right, and one thing that we have to remember too is that the Ford is now 700 pounds lighter thanks to the fact that it has the all aluminum body. I think that helps a lot. You don't have to have as much power and as much torque to get the thing moving down the road. Chevy's a little bit heavier, and you know, it makes good use of that big torquey motor.
You know, what did you think of the way that truck handled, you know, with that loss of weight? Did it make a difference to you?
I think it does. I mean, if there's one thing that I would say really separates these two trucks, it's their handling characteristics. I think that the Chevrolet it handles like we're used to traditional trucks handling it. A little bit of excessive body roll, you know, just a little bit heavy on its feet, if you will, you know, when you're going through bigger bumps, especially out here in the off-road environment. The Ford, to me, just has a tauter, tighter, more precise feel about it. The steering's a little better, and a lot of that has to do with the lightness and the new chassis that they came up with, the boxed ladder chassis that adds stiffness torsionally. I think it's a real improvement as far as half-ton trucks go.
The Silverado feels a little more like a traditional truck. You know, it's a little heavier in turns. We went on tight highway roads. You know, it labored a little bit more through the turns. Doesn't feel bad at all. It's what you expect and how you expect a truck to handle. The F-150 just has a little bit more refinement in that regard, I thought, in the steering, smoothness, and also the lightness through the corners.
You got to credit Chevrolet with making a truck this big and this heavy handle like it does. It handles very well. But I think that, you know, Ford went to school on this truck, and they decided that within their engineering framework, how they were going to make their truck work, they did it their way, and they made it a little bit better, in my opinion.
Now, in terms of the suspension for the Silverado, how did you feel that it performed on the highway and off-road?
If there's one area where the Ford really takes off and gets a big advantage over the Chevrolet, it is in the suspension performance. Now, I think that as heavy as the Chevrolet is, you could do a lot better with this truck to refine the suspension by maybe adding slightly heavier springs, adding shock absorbers that have a lot more rebound in them. That was one thing where I thought that the Chevrolet was a little bit lagging behind the Ford, especially in the rough stuff. The Ford is just a much more composed, a stiffer and more composed suspension. It's not uncomfortable by any stretch. It handles great on the highway. It handles excellently out here with the suspension package. It's very, very composed, handles the bumps really well. I just think that with the Chevrolet, it could stand to be a little bit beefier in the suspension department to give it a little bit better ride quality when the going gets rough.
If you're going to go put a 3-inch lift on these trucks, then you're not necessarily as worried how they're going to handle off-road as is. But we tested these trucks as someone would buy them off the floor. There's a couple complaints that we had. One was both trucks have air dams. We're all about fuel efficiency, so if you can save a half mile a gallon up to a full mile a gallon, which is what these air dams have said to be able to provide, you know, that's great. But you reduce clearance by as much as 6 inches on these trucks. So you're gonna be hitting that thing on the bumps every time. So if you're gonna include those on there, make it a little easier to take them off. And also the side steps on both trucks. I think both of them get in the way more off-road than they don't, but you know, a lot of people are gonna want them to get in and out of their trucks all the time. So they're not gonna wanna take those off.
I agree. I think that retractable steps are one area where both manufacturers could refine these trucks quite a bit. It's not that difficult now. We've seen them in the aftermarket now for quite a few years. I know that there are other manufacturers that are putting them on some of their vehicles, and I think that both of these vehicles deserve them just to gain that extra ground clearance and a little bit maybe better protection for the rockers. I think that one of the things that the Chevrolet did well is protect its rockers, but at the expense of the running boards themselves.
So the first truck you spent a lot of time in, Scott, was the Silverado. What did you think of the interior design? We're in the high country model, which is, you know, an upper trim level. So it's definitely a little more lavish inside, but what did you think overall?
Well, that's the thing. You hit it right on the head. You know, when I climbed in the high country, I felt pretty spoiled. I mean, you know, you're talking about the heated and cooled seats, right, with the 3-stage air conditioning. That's really nice, especially on warm days. I really like that. The Chevrolet MyLink system that with the big navigation and audio screen, I really like it. It's very intuitive. It's just a fantastic piece of technology that Chevrolet came out with, well, that GM came out with, and I really like that part of it. And the dual climate control that's in this particular truck is also really great when you have people who want you know, different temperatures on different sides of the vehicle. If there's a little bit of a knock against the Chevrolet, I'd say that it's not quite as roomy in the back as the Ford F-150 is. It's also, even though it doesn't have, I don't think, as wide of a center console, it doesn't feel as wide in the front. That's one thing that Ford did, was they did make their truck a little wider this year.
Additional 2 inches in the cabin.
Yeah, and it makes a difference. It definitely makes a difference. You wouldn't think that small amount of lateral width would make a difference, but you can definitely feel it in there. As far as the comfort of the seats, I still tend to favor the F-150. I think the seats wrap around a little bit better. The bucket seats, they hold you in place a little bit better. I really like that. And I just think that, you know, from a technological standpoint, the Ford is no slouch either. The system that they use for navigation and phone and audio is great. But I did find myself getting lost trying to use that a few times, and let's face it, 18 buttons on the steering wheel. That's a little, you have to take a look at that. You know, it can be a little distracting when you're trying to figure out exactly what it is you're trying to do, whether you're trying to toggle through the data information center or some of the other things that truck offers.
I did like the interior on the F-150 and the layout. The buttons are a little too busy for me. The touch screen on the F-150, it is not as intuitive as what's on the Silverado, but it's like any truck. I know you'll get used to it after a while, but you know, just back and forth between the two trucks, I thought the Silverado's was a little more intuitive and easy to use. It's easier to find exactly where you needed to be. You didn't have to kind of check the buttons to make sure you're hitting the right one.
And also from an exterior standpoint, I feel like the Chevrolet, even though it may be a little bit more traditional, more classic in a sense, this basic design has been with us for a little while, I really like the way this truck looks. I always have. I think it's just, there's something very familiar with it and very classic. And I like the styling of the Chevrolet. I really like the way that the grille lays out. I like this kind of the slab sides, if you will. And you know, this pearl white paint job is fantastic on this truck, and you know, the chrome wheels that come with the High Country, pretty nice bling. You know, it's a nice looking truck. And maybe with the F-150 from an exterior standpoint, you know, we might be judging it a little unfairly. It came in kind of a matte gray finish that's, you know, not the most exciting color-wise, but you know, the truck is a nice truck. The styling is really nice. I like the big open rounded wheel wells on it. I like the style of the wheels that are on the truck. And
it looks sporty.
Right, and the hand coupe tires, I thought they did a great job, you know, with the tires that they spec this truck with. You know, the Chevy has Goodyears, but the hand coupe tires on the Ford, they were grabbing the ground just as well as the Goodyears. So, you know, overall, I like them both, but I, you know, just prefer the Chevy a little bit from a styling and an interior standpoint. From a performance standpoint, you know, maybe the Ford's got just a bit of an edge. You know, if you're in the market for a half-ton truck, you can't go wrong with either one of these trucks. It's just a matter of deciding whether you favor tradition over maybe a little bit more high tech, you know.
Well, as we wrap up our testing here, we think we have a winner, but we know this is definitely a close test. So go and check out the full story on offroad.com. This is Josh Burns. See you next time.